Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, my name is Anna. I am a portrait photographer in the Chicagoland area, and today we're going to be talking about unpredictable weather. If you are a natural light photographer such as myself, you are going to run into a couple situations where the weather that you had intended during the shoot was not the one that actually had come about. So here's a couple tips and tricks that I have for you guys in case you run into this type of situation. I had set up a photo shoot with Cornelia, who is a model in the area, and the day that her and I were deciding, the forecast said it was supposed to be sunny. Then a couple days later, the forecast said that it was going to rain, and then the day of, it was supposed to be cloudy. So clearly you can see that is a huge problem in trying to figure out what the concept of the shoot was going to be if you don't really know what the weather is going to be. To make matters worse, the day prior to our photo shoot, I went to Target and bought a clear umbrella because that was a concept that I had been wanting to do and I wasn't even able to use it. So that is one thing that you're going to have to keep in mind when you are preparing for a unpredictable weather photo shoot. But the great thing about a cloudy day photo shoot is that it's going to be a giant softbox. So instead of a direct sunlight causing harsh shadows onto your subject and onto the ground, it's going to create softer shadows on your subject as well as softer shadows on the ground. I had selected this area because I know it fairly well, but if you are planning on doing a photo shoot, I recommend this for any to make sure that you check out the area beforehand. Some people do it the day before or do it an hour before, so that way they understand where exactly they're going to be standing and what angles they want to be using. Right off the bat, when I was scouting the area, I loved the patio of one of the restaurants because it created really nice leading lines. And because I knew exactly what Cornelia was wearing, it was going to be a nice contrast between her white sweater and the brown pillars. From there, I wanted to take a couple full body shots, and I had noticed with the same sweater that she was blending into the background because in the background there was a giant white sign. So I specifically had to move to a different angle to make sure that she wasn't bleeding to the background. The great thing about this alleyway is that it had a lot of windows from the restaurants and the shops. And the great thing about windows is that it creates a lot of reflections. So what I had done is I had made Cornelia put her back towards the window, so that way it was creating an illusion of a second person or a reflection of herself. Once I had taken a couple photos that I had liked, it was time to open up Lightroom and begin editing. We're going to be editing this photo today, and I'm going to keep this actually super short and sweet because a lot of the things that I did in this photo is everything that I wanted straight out of camera. So I'm going to show you guys the before, and this is the after. So the first thing that we're going to do is go into the right hand side in the light panel, and the reason why I had slightly overexposed this photo is because I wanted to keep those whites and the darks. So the number one thing that you're going to have to do is bring the exposure down and bring the contrast up, because the one thing that I had noticed after I'd taken this photo is that you can still see that her white sweater is still bleeding into that sign in the background, and the best way to make sure that she is still popping from this photo is to bring down that exposure and definitely increase that contrast. In the color panel, I did very minimal work here. I liked the color that was going off from the blue cloudy day that we were having, so I still kept it in this blue hue, and I really like the color of her blue jeans and the very sparkly beret on her head, so I wanted to make sure that I boosted up that bright vibrance to really make both of those pop. In the color grading, I kept it very minimal here. I brought the shadows to more of a bluish turquoise look. In the midtones, I didn't even bother working on any of that. And then in the highlights, I kept it to more of a yellowish orange hue. That also helps warm up the photo. So the great thing about Lightroom is that if you ever run into a situation where you have a horizon line that is slightly crooked, that can sometimes be a distraction for other photographers or even other people as well. So the great tool that you can use is Straighten. Now Straighten is this little ruler over here, and it basically tries to find any sort of line in your photo. Once it finds that line, it essentially figures out that this is exactly going to be the line that's going to help them figure out that it needs to be straight. So I have already done it already. So sometimes I do want to mention that Lightroom can go a little crazy and sort of bring it to this or this. So it's best to use your best judgment and try to figure out where the horizon line is going to be. So if I hit straighten here, you're going to see that it automatically went to where it believes it's best. And I do recommend to use your best judgment to make sure that the horizon lines are correct. Once I'm done with that, I go into the selective edits, and I really did minimal work here. I just wanted to make sure that her eyes are very bright and very clear, so you're staring directly into them. And I also just wanted to create a small circle over her and boost the exposure to make sure that you're really focusing in on her face. And this is the final result. The first tip that I have for you in regards to unpredictable weather photo shoots is to always bring lots of different props. Most of the time, if a client wants to do a photo shoot, they don't want to do it during the rain because usually it's cold and miserable. But if you have a model or someone that you're collaborating with, they're more likely to be a little more creative. And that way you can bring either an umbrella or different types of props to play around with that sort of weather. I have seen lots of different photo shoots recently with rainy weather to have a clear umbrella, so that way you're able to see the subject within. So that is something that you can easily find at any other store. The second tip that I have for you, especially if you're working with a client and is a photo shoot during a rainy season, is let them be aware that there might be a possibility that it might rain that day. So possibly offer a redo or a rain check to reschedule that shoot. If you run into a situation where either the model or the client can't take any photos any other day and it has to be that day, I would offer different solutions for where you would be taking the photos. So you can either do it in studio, indoors, or you can do it outside and find places that have a roof to cover you. If you don't have a studio such as myself, I would highly suggest going to maybe a botanic garden or a greenhouse, because most of the time there is places where the flowers are covered up, and depending on the seasons, you can be getting lots of different colors. If you are planning on taking photos in a conservatory or a botanic garden, I would highly suggest looking at their websites if they have any photographer's permits, because you don't want to run into a situation where you are with a client and all of a sudden an employee of that place asks for your permit or asks if you had permission to take photos there. So the best thing that you can do is just go ahead on the website and prepare to make sure that you're ready for the shoot. The last tip that I have for you is to make sure that you have some protective covering for you and your equipment. I've run into a couple situations where I was at a photo shoot and it was completely sunny the entire day, but as the photo shoot was going on, it started to become more and more like a rainstorm. So I made sure that I had some either plastic wrap or some type of Ziploc bag to make sure that none of my equipment got wet, either my camera or my lights, and then put everything straight into my car. So that is one thing that you might want to remember in case you ever run into this type of situation. Another thing that I do want to mention really quick is that towards the end of the photo shoot, I had decided to take Cornelia with her permission on the street, and I didn't want to have her in the middle of the street because it was a really busy day and obviously we would be stopping traffic. So it's very important to make sure that you're aware of your surroundings and make sure that you and your client or your model are safe. If you are planning on doing some street photography with your model in the middle of the street, I would suggest to either be smarter than me and try to make sure that it's a day that not many people are there or cars driving by, as well as making sure that you are taking your moments very safely. So if you ever need to run into a situation where you need to go to the side of the street, make it really accessible for you and your subject to do so. On top of that, make sure that you ask your model or your client for permission to do anything during the shoot. I don't want to make Cornelia or any other model uncomfortable, so I always let them know what my next steps are to make sure that they have an ability to say no at any point in time. But that is the end of this video. If you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the notification button to get notified every single time I post a new video. If you like videos just like this, I have a playlist created where I go behind the scenes of my current photo shoots, so that will be listed up here as well as in the description box below. Since things are slowly opening up again, I am planning to do some small weekend trips, so I have another playlist where you can travel the world with me and see what I do in my free time, so that will be also listed down below. But that is all that I have for you guys today. I hope you guys are staying safe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.